In this video, we're going to show you how to use the program review report file that you have to come up with key ideas that you can implement in your overall programs. Please keep in mind that everything that I mentioned in this video is made up. Any similarities to real life, they're just purely coincidental. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about Steve. Steve is an anatomy professor, which is one program under healthcare. And there's only one class for that anatomy program. So Steve gets his program review file and he starts looking at the data, and he's going to start focusing on enrollments. So he's going to click on enrollments, and as you can see that he has his anatomy class right here. And you can see that enrollments, they have decreased, which is kind of be expected with the trend. What else he sees? Now he wants to look online. Now he sees that enrollments online for the last years have been increasing substantially, especially when you compare them to the on-campus. So in 2015, 2016, they were almost evenly split 50-50. However, by this year, the last year, 2019-20, we have almost 3/4 of the class are online. So he's starting to see there's a big shift for this class. Normally, anatomy would be a class that would be mostly in person, as most of the healthcare classes are. But since the situation we're in, a lot of classes transition into online, and out of all the healthcare classes that do need some labs, anatomy was the one that it was easier to transition online. So he's clearly seeing in the numbers that the online classes is going to be the new trend, and probably is going to happen for the next years. So he has to start thinking about his class in terms of how can he give the best resources to the class in an online environment. So for that, he wants to look at the demographics, because as we know, maybe the demographics can help us give us an idea of if there are certain groups that need special care compared to others, and maybe we can focus on certain groups and see what kind of methodologies we can apply to those groups. So Steve's going to go back to the beginning, and he's going to look at headcount, because he wants to see for the headcount class, how is he doing? So looking at the numbers for the last year, he sees that 3,000 of his students are female and 2,000 are male, which expected. And then we see here that most of them are divided into Latino and white population, with a couple on other minority groups. However, here's where he finds something really interesting. If he looks at age group, he can see that there's very two distinct groups. Most of his class is between 18-year-olds and 24 years old. And the other most of the class is 50 years and older. This is interesting because, as most of you may know, older people have a hard time dealing with these transitions in technology compared to younger people. Younger people are more used to working with iPads, having cell phones, while older people were not raised in that way. So for them, it's an extra effort to understand these kind of things. On top of that, as we move more towards a distant learning community, it seems that Steve has to focus on the 50 and older folks to see how he can help them understand how to use the online tools in a better way. But just to be sure, he wants to look at what the overall trend is going to be for the next couple of years for all SDCE. So if you look at all SDCE, he wants to understand on a macro level what is happening. If definitely the shift to online is only happening to him, or it's something that's happening all over the community, all over the campus. So he's going to check on all SDCE. Then he's going to go to enrollments by on-campus online to make sure. So here in enrollments by on-campus online, it turns out that, yes, the trend is clearly showing. Here in 2015, 2016, you had only 12% of your students online, while this last year, you have 60% of the students going, and you see it's been increasing year by year, 12%, 16%, 20%, 27%, and then a big jump to 59%, and it's probably going to keep increasing as we see that things are evolving towards a distant community environment. Therefore, at this point, Steve is convinced that he has to focus on how to make his online tools more accessible for those who have a hard time working with these tools. One thing that Steve could do is look at overall completion thresholds for his class, but the problem is, since overall completion thresholds is only focusing on on-campus students, that's an analysis that he cannot do. So for now, he can only speculate, but he knows his students and he understands that the older folks are definitely going to have a hard time, and this was shown by the demographics. So it's now at this point that Steve is trying to figure out what to do. So what Steve just saw basically was that there were the main takeaways were that that there's going to be an increase in online enrollments in the foreseeable future. That's going to be the new trend. And his anatomy students are divided into two main groups, age groups, which are between 18 and 24 years old, and mostly older folk, 40 years and older. So here are the takeaways that he takes from that. Now, looking at that, he tries to think, so what is that? What are those takeaways showing Steve? Well, he concludes that he has to make sure that his older folks are able to follow, are able to understand whatever that he's trying to teach. On top of that, he knows that most of the minorities that he teach are people who did not grow up in an environment where they could interact a lot of computers. There's a lot of older Latinos in his class that they don't have that much experience with computers. And he saw also in his demographics that there was a group of white students, and seems by the numbers and by what he's seen in his class, most of the white students are the younger folk who had the opportunity to actually have an education and start going to the healthcare career, compared to the Latino folk who are just going back to school after many years of not studying. So he concludes that older students will probably have a hard time adapting to the online tools for the class. And based on that conclusion, he's trying to figure out a way to help them. So he comes up with several ideas. The first one, and the basic one, is try to come up with online trainings and things that he could put on the website, or even set some time apart in his classes for those folks who are struggling with the online tools. He could let them know that he's there for them, and if they ever need anything, contact him. So that's one of the items that he's gonna work on for the future. But then he also has another idea. If he knows that his younger students are not having such a hard time with the online tools, well, why don't he get the younger students to work together with the older students, such that the younger students can help the older students understand how to use these tools better. Maybe if he can offer some extra credit, or just force the class to have study groups and he's the one choosing the study groups, maybe he can also achieve that between the students they can help each other. So in the end, he's probably gonna either create study groups, and putting older students together with younger students, and hopefully that'll work. So basically in this video, Steve was able to look at the data, focus on his main class, which was anatomy. We go back here, program, and then anatomy. Let's wait for it to load. And he saw that the enrollments are basically increasing for his class. After looking at the enrollments were increasing, he looked at the demographics to see if there was some trend between his groups, and he realized that there's two main age groups, 18 and 24, as well as 50 and older. So he decided that that his students, his older students, would probably have a harder time than his younger students. And this is based on what he's seeing in the numbers and what he's seeing in the classes, as well as personal experience. Just to make sure that this is something that's happening all over, and it's not only happening for programs. Steve looked at all SDCE and then went back to enrollments by on-campus online and realized that yes, online classes is something that is going to be a new trend right now, and it's going to, the foreseeable future is going to have a lot of online classes. So it's definitely worth the while focusing on trying to help people who are struggling with the online tools for this new type of class environment. So therefore, he decided that he was going to focus on those students who are having a hard time in their online classes. And in order to do that, in order to help them, he's going to offer extra material for those who are having a hard time with the online environment, as well as creating study groups, forcing younger students with older students to be together in groups such that they can share, the younger students can share the knowledge and can help the older students with the online tools. And at the same time, maybe the older students can help the younger students be more focused or share some of their experience that they've been through life to the younger folks.